Because we have, in my grandparents' day, you guys, we could go to my Aunt Joyce's house. My Aunt Joyce, she was this chick, man, I'm telling you what. She smoked like a freaking chimney. Had skin that was like a pair of leather boots. I mean, the woman did not die from cancer. Literally, what are there, 12, anybody in here smoke or did smoke? I smoked years ago, but I don't remember. So is it 12 packs in a carton? 24 packs in a carton? So she and my 12, I think it's 12, yeah. 12. She and my uncle, so I had an Aunt Joyce and I had an Uncle Fred. Uncle Fred and Aunt, isn't that a good Midwest couple's name? Mm-hmm. Uncle Fred and Aunt Joyce. Uncle Fred was diabetic, smoked like a maniac. Aunt Joyce smoked crazy, leather skin, one of the most sweetest people you'd ever want to meet in your entire life. She knew how to cuss up a storm. She was so fun to be around. She was one of these people that you knew you were loved when you were with Joyce. You just did. She was just one of these Kansas farm women that could take down a man and beat the crud out of this guy in the dirt, make him suck it up his nose and spit it back out his mouth, and then she'd get up and she'd say, "You want some more?" That kind of a chick, right? And strong woman, very strong. All that said, where was I going with that? I got so caught up in Aunt Joyce.
She died.
Oh, you go to her house, and when she built her house, she had a root cellar. I remember going out to the root cellar. And later on, when they added to the house, they actually put a basement entrance to the root cellar. So as they they built their house, they actually built a tunnel from the basement of their home out to the root cellar. So you go through this hallway thing, and you'd walk kind of through this cavern, and it would drop. It'd be like, I don't know, 58, 63 degrees in this little root cellar because there was no air. Like, it was just all underground, and you'd walk in and it was like utopia. There was canned meat, right? Like in ball jars, the glass jars, and she would take the meat from her cattle and she'd slice it up and she'd stick it in these jars and she'd make this brown gravy and she'd put the gravy in there and she'd seal it and she'd cook the meat with the gravy. Oh, baby. Oh my gosh. You go to Aunt Joyce's house, I'm salivating. I feel like one of Pavlov's dogs right now. You go to her house and she wouldn't be ready for you, and you'd show up and she'd throw some noodles on the stove. She'd go down to the cellar and she'd pull this jar of meat with gravy and she'd pop it open and put it in a pan and heat it up, and you'd pour it over the top of the noodles and you'd have noodles and beef and gravy. Oh my gosh, it was so good. So good.
So she'd be ready if there was no food.
She knew. That's my point, right? I mean, here is a woman, not a Christian, no fear of God. Well, she might have had a fear of God. I shouldn't say she had no fear of God. I think toward the end of her life she gained more. But even without any real Christian belief, she instinctively knew that she should have an abundance of food because she didn't know what was going to happen. That's my parents' generation. That was normal. My grandparents were that way. My aunts and uncles were that way. I'm 54. That would make my aunts and uncles in their 70s, most of them in their 70s and 80s, right? That generation got it. Now think, she could literally live in her house, in her basement, for probably well over a year on the amount of food that she had in that root cellar. It was a big root cellar, and it was just lined to the gills, all across the walls, all the way up the floor, up to the top. She had fruits, she had vegetables, she had canned meat. She could have lived for a long period. Scavenged off the earth to fill in, and when she couldn't find something that day, she'd go down and grab a bottle of something. The days that she found things out in the field, she'd eat what she found. The days that she didn't have anything, she could eat out of her store. Doesn't that kind of sound like wisdom? That's the way people used to live. It was normal. Now, it's illegal. Facebook had a thing out not that long ago, not even a year ago. Facebook started putting the display ads up. Do you know people who are over-prepared? Click here to report them. Facebook is asking you to turn in your neighbors for having food in their house. Why? Because Satan's showing his hand. Satan is proud. He's prideful. Pride. Scripture says he was found perfect in every way until iniquity was found in his heart. Pride rose up in Satan. He's a very prideful person. He's telling us, I'm going to do these things. Watch me. I'm going to own the earth. I'm going to control it. 2030 is coming. How many of you guys have heard anything about 2030? Watch the news. 2030 here, 2030 there, 2030 here, 2030 there, 2030, 2030, 2030. Why do you keep hearing this? Because he's showing us. Anybody see the movie Songbird that came out? It scared the crud out of me. I didn't watch it because it was like, that's too real. Songbird, Google it. It's all about COVID and how people go door to door and start taking people away to concentration camps because they refuse to get vaccinated. You're in the middle of the street. You don't have your wristband on saying that you're vaccinated. They just shoot you on the street and leave you for dead. That's exactly what they were doing down in Australia. That was reality. The movie came out in advance. When I see movies like that, I look at it and I say, that is Satan showing his hand. He is showing us what he's going to do. And sure enough, it wasn't 6 months before it started happening around different places in the world.
There's an X-Files like that too.
He's proud. He likes to show that he's in control. So when you see movies that show you things like that, make a mental note and say, oh, that's interesting that Satan would be inspiring that. That must be something that we should watch for coming up. So I'm saying all that just to say this. Every person has a responsibility on what you're going to do with this stuff when you read it. It's your responsibility to pray about it. It's your responsibility to figure out what you're going to do with it, if anything. I can't make the decision for you. I can't tell you, figure out how you're going to start a fire. You're going to have to figure it out on your own. I can't tell you, I can't make you deal with the question, what are you going to do if you can't get food from a grocery store? You're going to have to do that. I can't do it for you, right? But if you look back at Matthew, Jesus kept saying what? Over and over and over again. Matthew 24, Matthew 25. What was the phrase that we looked at? Be prepared. Connor got it. Be prepared. Who were the wise virgins that went into the wedding feast when the bridegroom came? Who was it?
The ones that were prepared.
The ones who were prepared. They were the ones that went into the wedding feast. So over and over and over again, we see, had the goodman of the house known what hour the thief would have broken in, he would not have suffered his house to be broken into. He would have been prepared. All the way through Matthew 24, Matthew 25, Jesus keeps saying the same thing. Be prepared, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. All 5 times, be prepared. I think there's a trend that he's expecting us to get as we're going through these scriptures. Having said that, let's go to Revelation 11. I absolutely think this chapter is one of the most interesting, fascinating chapters to read in the Revelation. Because this is the dead prophet camp. And the reason why I call it that is because how many of you remember the phenomena that was out about the owl cam? The baby owl cam? Somebody had climbed up to the precipice of a rock and stuck a camera on this little owl's nest, or not owl, eagle's nest. It was an eagle cam, so it was not owl cam. It was on an eagle's nest, and you could go on the internet and you could pull up the eagle cam and you could watch, and it would show you the eggs, and the parents would take turns going and getting stuff and taking care to make certain that the eggs were covered and warmed and all that. And then when the eagles cracked out of their little shells, the mom and dad eagle would go and they would bring food back, and the eagles, the little eaglets, you'd see them grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for months it was the rage, until finally all good things come to an end and everybody left home. All the little eagles flew off into the sunset. And the person that had that, I think, had millions of followers because people were just logging onto YouTube to watch this live stream, if that's what it indeed was, I don't know, of these little baby eagles. And it was circulating. It was just crazy. That's what we're going to see.